Welcome to our deep dive into Europe's most dangerous countries 2025. From war-torn regions to urban hotspots, we're exploring the places where conflict, crime, and instability reign. Ukraine's battlefields, Russia's iron grip, and Belarus's oppression kick off our list, followed by Turkey's terror risks and France's unrest. Belgium's gang wars, Sweden's rising violence, the UK's knife crime, Italy's Mafia shadow, and Greece's tense streets round it out. Join us as we uncover what makes these nations stand out in a continent known for peace, and why caution is key in 2025. 10. Greece. Greece rounds out the list in 2025 with dangers tied to civil unrest, refugee pressures, and petty crime. Economic recovery remains fragile, and austerity measures spark protests in Athens, where clashes with police over labor rights or pensions occasionally turn violent with tear gas and Molotov cocktails. As a frontline state for refugees fleeing war, islands like Lesbos host overcrowded camps, fostering smuggling and tensions with locals. Petty theft thrives in tourist hubs like the Acropolis or Santorini, targeting distracted visitors with pickpocketing or scams. Terrorism is a minor concern, but Greece's role in NATO and proximity to unstable regions keeps security forces alert. Wildfires and earthquakes, recurrent natural threats, disrupt safety further, especially in summer. Rural mainland and less visited islands feel safer, but urban and border areas carry the weight of these challenges. Travelers enjoy Greece's beauty with care, but its mix of social strain and external pressures marks it as a nation navigating a delicate balance. 9. Italy. Italy's place among 2025's dangerous European countries stems from a blend of organized crime, petty theft, and terrorism risks. The Mafia, groups like the 'Ndrangheta and Cosa Nostra, still wield influence in regions like Calabria and Sicily, engaging in drug trafficking, extortion, and occasional violence that spills into public life. Cities like Rome, Naples, and Milan see rampant pickpocketing and scams targeting tourists, especially in crowded landmarks like the Colosseum or train stations. Terrorism threats loom, with Italy's historical sites and Vatican City as potential targets, prompting heavy security in key areas. Political instability, marked by frequent government turnover and economic stagnation, fuels protests that sometimes clash with police. Natural hazards like earthquakes and volcanic activity near Etna add unpredictable risks. While rural areas offer respite, urban centers and southern regions bear the brunt of these issues. Travelers face manageable dangers with awareness, but Italy's charm is tempered by a complex underbelly of crime and vulnerability that demands constant vigilance. 8. United Kingdom. The United Kingdom ranks as a dangerous European country in 2025 due to persistent urban crime and a lingering terrorism threat. Cities like London, Manchester, and Birmingham grapple with knife crime, a scourge that claims lives weekly, often tied to youth gangs and drug disputes. Police efforts to curb it, stop-and-search tactics, stir controversy without fully solving the problem. Terrorism, while less frequent than in past decades, remains a concern, with intelligence agencies monitoring extremist cells plotting attacks on public spaces. Political unrest, fueled by post-Brexit economic struggles and Scottish independence debates, occasionally flares into disruptive protests. Rural areas and smaller towns are far safer, but urban density amplifies risks. Petty crime, like pickpocketing, targets tourists in crowded hubs like Oxford Street or train stations. The UK's robust security apparatus mitigates some dangers, yet the combination of street violence and the shadow of larger threats keeps it on edge. Visitors enjoy relative safety with caution, but the nation's challenges reflect a society wrestling with identity and order in uncertain times. 7. Sweden. Sweden, long a beacon of safety, has slid into Europe's more dangerous ranks by 2025 due to escalating gang violence and social shifts. Cities like Stockholm, Malmö, and Gothenburg see frequent shootings and bombings linked to drug trafficking and turf disputes among criminal networks, often fueled by immigrant communities facing integration challenges. This marks a stark departure from its peaceful past, with residential areas occasionally caught in the crossfire. The government's efforts to crack down, more police and stricter laws, have yet to stem the tide, and public unease grows. Terrorism remains a background concern, though less immediate than in other nations. Economic inequality and housing shortages exacerbate tensions, leading to sporadic protests that rarely turn violent but signal underlying discontent. Tourists are largely unaffected beyond petty theft in busy areas, but the shifting urban landscape demands vigilance. Sweden's rural north remains tranquil, contrasting sharply with its troubled cities. Its danger lies in this unexpected rise of localized violence, challenging its progressive identity and forcing a rethink of safety norms. 6. Belgium. Belgium's inclusion in 2025's dangerous European country stems from a mix of terrorism risks and rising urban crime. Brussels, the EU capital, has faced past attacks, like the 2016 airport and metro bombings, and remains a symbolic target for extremists due to its political significance. Intelligence efforts thwart many plots, but the threat persists, keeping security tight. Beyond this, cities like Antwerp grapple with gang violence tied to the cocaine trade, as Belgium's ports serve as a major entry point for drugs into Europe. Shootings and turf wars spill into residential areas, unsettling once quiet neighborhoods. Political instability, with a fractured government split by linguistic and regional divides, hampers decisive action on these issues. Petty crime, such as pickpocketing, targets tourists in train stations and historic sites. While rural regions feel safer, urban centers bear the weight of these challenges. Visitors must navigate heightened police presence and the slim risk of sudden violence, though Belgium's small size and connectivity offer quick escapes. Its danger reflects a struggle to balance openness with security in a turbulent era. 5. France. France, a global tourism powerhouse, ranks among Europe's more dangerous nations in 2025 due to persistent terrorism threats and social unrest. Cities like Paris and Nice have a history of high-profile attacks by extremist groups, and intelligence agencies warn of ongoing plots targeting crowded public spaces. The government's heightened security measures, armed patrols and surveillance, reflect this reality, yet they also fuel tensions with communities feeling unfairly targeted, sparking occasional riots in suburban banlieues. Organized crime, particularly drug-related violence, has surged in ports like Marseille, while petty theft remains rampant in tourist areas. Political polarization, driven by economic inequality and immigration debates, has led to disruptive protests, sometimes turning violent with police clashes. Rural areas are safer, but urban centers bear the brunt of these issues. Travelers face pickpocketing risks and the slim but real chance of being near a terror incident, though France's infrastructure and emergency response are robust. Its danger lies in the convergence of external threats and internal fractures, challenging its image as a carefree destination. 4. Turkey. Turkey straddles Europe and Asia, and its European portion faces significant dangers in 2025 due to a mix of terrorism, political instability, and regional tensions. Urban centers like Istanbul remain targets for extremist attacks, a lingering threat from groups exploiting the country's proximity to conflict zones in Syria and Iraq. The government's authoritarian shift under President Erdogan has sparked domestic unrest, with protests over economic woes and human rights abuses often met with police tear gas and arrests. Turkey's role as a gateway for millions of refugees fleeing war adds strain, fostering smuggling networks and occasional clashes in border areas like Edirne. Organized crime, including drug trafficking, thrives amid this chaos, while tensions with Greece over maritime disputes keep military forces on edge. Earthquakes, a natural hazard, further compound risks, as seen in past devastation that exposed poor infrastructure. For visitors, the blend of petty crime in tourist hubs, arbitrary detentions of perceived critics, and the unpredictable security situation makes caution essential. Turkey's strategic location and internal challenges create a volatile environment where danger lurks beneath its cultural allure. 3. Belarus. Belarus earns its spot as a dangerous European country in 2025 through a toxic blend of political oppression and regional instability. Aligned closely with Russia, it serves as a staging ground for the Ukraine war, drawing international condemnation and economic sanctions that deepen its isolation. The authoritarian regime of Alexander Lukashenko maintains power through rigged elections and brutal suppression of dissent, with cities like Minsk witnessing violent clashes between security forces and protesters demanding freedom. Mass arrests, torture allegations, and a pervasive surveillance state stifle any opposition, creating an atmosphere of dread. Economically, the country struggles with inflation and unemployment, driving petty crime and black market activity as citizens seek survival. Belarus's proximity to the Ukrainian conflict zone adds another layer of risk, with military movements and refugee flows straining its borders. While not a war zone itself, the government's unpredictability, coupled with its willingness to detain foreigners as political pawns, makes it a perilous destination. Travelers face strict visa controls and the constant threat of being caught in a sudden crackdown, marking Belarus as a nation teetering on the edge. 2. Russia. Russia ranks high among Europe's dangerous nations in 2025, driven by its aggressive role in the Ukraine war and internal instability. While urban centers like Moscow and St. Petersburg project an image of control, the country is a powder keg of suppressed dissent and ethnic tensions. The authoritarian government under Vladimir Putin cracks down harshly on protests, with reports of mass arrests and disappearances of critics creating a climate of fear. Regions like Chechnya and Dagestan see sporadic violence from separatist movements, while organized crime, spanning cyber warfare, arms trafficking, and drug networks, operates with impunity. Western sanctions have crippled the economy, leading to shortages and rising poverty, which in turn fuel unrest among a population increasingly disillusioned with propaganda. Russia's vast border with conflict zones, including Ukraine, heightens external threats, and its military buildup signals readiness for further aggression. For foreigners, the risks are stark. Arbitrary detentions, accusations of espionage, and restricted movement make travel a gamble. The combination of a militarized state, internal volatility, and global pariah status renders Russia a hazardous place in 2025. 1. Ukraine. Ukraine is currently Europe's most dangerous country due to its ongoing war with Russia, which shows no signs of abating as of April 5, 2025. The conflict has transformed daily life into a struggle for survival, with major cities like Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Odessa enduring frequent missile and drone attacks that demolish infrastructure and disrupt access to essentials like electricity, water, and heat. Russian forces occupy swathes of the east and south, leading to constant frontline clashes that displace civilians and strain resources. Beyond the battlefield, the breakdown of law and order has fueled a surge in crime, including looting, human trafficking, and black market dealings, as desperate populations seek to cope. Millions have fled as refugees, yet those who remain face a grim reality of curfews, conscription, and the ever-present threat of sudden violence. The war's unpredictability, coupled with the risk of escalation involving advanced weaponry, keeps Ukraine in a state of perpetual emergency. Foreign governments have issued the strictest travel warnings, advising against all visits, as even humanitarian efforts struggle to operate safely amid the chaos. Ukraine's danger stems not just from active combat but from the cascading effects of a society under siege.